Jon Wesick here with a passage from my novel, The Disillusionment of Hal LK2154. This takes place in a future where everybody is a clone, and since people are all brothers and sisters, supposedly there is no violence because how could you hurt yourself, basically? Young Hal has just graduated from high school, and he hooks up with his girlfriend Jane. He meets her at a bar and hooks up in some abandoned house, only it turns out that's not his Jane, it's just another clone named Jane, so we'll pick up there. Oh my God, the woman put her hand over her mouth and laughed. We've identity fucked. I thought you seemed a little inexperienced. I'm Jane QG3119. Hal LK2154. Don't worry, honey. Jane QG3119 kissed Hal on the cheek. Happens all the time. You weren't cheating on your girl. I mean, you were attracted to the part of her you saw in me. Of course, you'll have to be treated for herpes. Hal's mouth dropped open. Just kidding. God, you're so gullible. Jane put her legs into her panties, stood and pulled up her jeans. I gotta get back to the club. I hope Roger hasn't already left with somebody else. Hal let her leave first. Her joke and the bit about him being inexperienced still stung, and he didn't feel like talking to her. As he pulled on his underwear, he spotted something red glittering on the floor by the mattress. Hal picked up the earring Jane had forgotten and examined it in the candlelight. He'd better return it. Hal sighed and stepped into his pants. He blew out the candle, dashed out the front door, and looked back and forth. A strong wind had started while he was inside. Branches swayed. The wind blew dark clouds across the moon's face, and shadows slithered across the grass. Hal crossed his arms over his chest to keep warm. With her head start, Jane QG3119 would be hard to catch. Hal picked up his pace and retraced his steps. The other side of the billboard was the powder blue of the ruling Unity Party, proclaiming its motto, order. As a new graduate, Hal would be eligible to vote in the upcoming election. He didn't follow politics, but leaned toward unity, even though Jane tried to get him to vote for the Rapid Development Party. A series of desperate screams came from up ahead. Hal ran toward the sounds. The cries turned to whimpers, and the whimpering grew quiet. At the sight of an abandoned factory, Hal froze. A man plunged something shiny into Jane QG3119's abdomen again and again until she collapsed to the ground. The man knelt by her body and began carving the skin of her forearm. Things like this were not supposed to happen in the modern world. No! Hal's voice cut through the gusting wind, his voice breaking in stunned disbelief, shock, then overwhelming fear. The murderer looked up from his grisly deed, and the two men locked eyes. Hal could have been looking in a mirror. After a fraction of a second, the killer turned and ran with his bloody token. Overcoming his paralysis, Hal gave chase, but soon abandoned the reckless heroics that would only get him stabbed. He returned to the gruesome scene. Blood had soaked Jane's blouse, and her blank, unblinking eyes stared like those of a fish in a display case. A jagged hole remained where the killer had carved the barcode ID from Jane's forearm. A sickly, sweet taste gathered at the back of Hal's throat. He turned and vomited. Knees shaking, Hal unclipped his cell phone from his belt and dialed the Public Security Bureau.